Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of the Daily Friend. This will be a new feature, a new insert that we do that will provide news, comment, analysis on a daily basis in the morning for you. This show is brought to you proudly by the Institute of Race Relations and of course the Big Liberty Show. I'm not alone. I'm literally with friends here today. Joining me today is the editor-at-large of the Daily Friend, Ms. Sarah Gon. Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
And of course, we're joined by the good old Terence Corrigan, who I'm sure you guys are quite aware of with his writings. Terence, good morning.
Good morning, Nancy.
And of course, we have Nicholas Lorimer, or Nick Lorimer. Nick, morning. Guys, interesting week that we've just had, and also interesting week ahead. Let me start with the more unconventional stuff, because it always is the sort of more cheesy stuff, so to speak. The BLF. They had their event, I'll call it a sort of party event for the election. They, of course, are standing for election, the rabid lefties that they are. But there's something special about the appearance that he had recently. Tell us a bit about that, Sarah.
It was spectacular. It was the launch of their election manifesto, and Jong Mngxitama, their leader, I don't know if he has another name, appeared on stage in a suit allegedly given to him by Jong the leader of North Korea. And very sartorial in a sort of inelegant kind of way is what he looked. And he quoted his friend at length about being sort of the toughest guy on the planet, and Donald Trump was no match for him, which is true in a sort of way. And he basically went on to laud the North Koreans and the North Korean leader, and he gave the impression it was his friend, but I haven't yet been able to verify whether there is actually a relationship between them.
Or some sort of delusion of grandeur, really.
I'm a bit worried that Andile's has nuclear ambitions.
Oh, wow.
I think we should watch out for that. But I am going to do further research to see whether this was pure showmanship or something more real.
Terence, he's copying the look, right, of Kim Jong-un, but is he also copying the policies of there? What do we know about North Korea?
Okay, what do we know about North Korea? Not as much as we wish we did. South Korean intelligence actually often has to look at photographs and look at things like plants in the background to try and establish when the photograph was taken. I understand that we don't even know Kim Jong-un's birthday.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that is how secretive and isolated the state is. But I do think that there's an interesting point of a point of intersection here. The BLF is not what you would call an orthodox left party. It's spliced the sort of hardcore Marxism into what I describe as kind of modern intersectional race politics. Now, North Korea is also not an orthodox communist country in the sense that the Soviet Union was. Their ideology draws very heavily on an almost religious, mythical view of Korean history. Yeah. A lot of it is, would be regarded by your 20th century doctrinaire Marxists as profoundly unscientific. I mean, there's lots of mythology about being born under a double rainbow, and I think in this sense there is actually something that unites these two movements in a way that does not exist, say, between the North Koreans and our more conventional friends in the South African Communist Party. So yes, it's intriguing, but I mean, I would say 10 out of 10 to the BLF for grabbing attention with a fashion statement.
Nick, Kim Jong-un, Jong Mngxitama, the idea of the strongman socialist politician. Do you think it finds resonance with voters in this country?
Well, I hope not, but unfortunately it seems like history has shown quite often that that kind of persona, that kind of swagger, so to speak, actually is pretty good at capturing at least some people's attention and building that kind of cult of personality. So it's probably not a great development, but hopefully this kind of exposes that sort of ideology that's floating about in South Africa for what it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, at least now we have a vision.
Yeah.
Right? North Korea might have slave camps, might have the worst human rights record on the planet, but at least now we know where we're going, so that's good news.
Well, there you go, swagger with the 1950s dress sense.
I just want to know, was that suit made in South Africa?
That would be really
Wasn't even made in North Korea.
Is anything made in North Korea?
The whole point of Juche philosophy from North Korea is that you're supposed to be self-reliant. So he's
Right.
really letting the side down if it's not made in South Africa.
Well, there you go. Guys, again, as we sort of chat through this, I want to constantly remind the viewers out there that, this is the sort of content and, of course, harder, more data-driven analysis that the Daily Friend will be providing. And you can find us, of course, at www.dailyfriend.org.za. Excuse me, .co.za. There you go. What else do we have on our mind today? Sarah, what's on your radar?
Okay, something more depressing and similar and seemingly repetitive is a report that the government's fisheries branch has had to stop paying for its own research and patrol fleet and suspend vital research to assess fish population numbers. And this apparently is due to administrative collapse at the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, due, no less, to infighting between officials. Apparently large amounts have been spent on legal bills, but the Deputy Director General Sibokazi Ndodani has at least admitted that her department is in meltdown.
Yeah. Well, look, one doesn't even need her admitting this to know that it is. I mean, there are fishing communities around the country that are deeply unhappy with the department. I mean, Hout Bay, for example, has been the recent flare-up. If you guys remember that incident where the kid got shot, for instance.
Yeah.
Guys, the role of the state in terms of, in this particular instance, monitoring fisheries or just any sort of oversight on economic activity. Generally, what is our view on that before we sort of head into looking at how and why this department would collapse?
Look, I think that there's a curious disjuncture in this country. You have a government that since the 1990s has been talking about how it is building this mighty, to go back to the Koreas, the South Korean developmental state. This is imaginary. Last year there was a very intriguing piece in the Business Day where an MEC from the Gauteng provincial government was talking about how it's urgent that we have a public debate to define the developmental state. Now just think about what that's saying. It's a politics that exists in the realm of make believe.
Yeah.
The South Koreans, the Taiwanese, the Singaporeans, later the Chinese didn't come up with a sort of abstract model and then try and shoehorn things around. What they went for was often quite brutal efficiency. There's something in Confucian culture that has always venerated education. That was the kind of the great aristocracy, if you like. Okay, I mean, if you're born with money, well,
Efficient as possible.
but the Chinese have had a civil service that goes back thousands of years.
Yeah.
To be an educated person in those societies was to have a particular type of status, and and so what those states did was to bring the best and the brightest in, and to look at solutions that were going to deal with particular problems and achieve particular goals.
Just out of interest,
Yeah.
is the South African state, the ANC government, are they organizing their bureaucracy to be brutally efficient? Like,
More brutal and less efficient.
If you actually look at the way the South African bureaucracy functions, it seems more that the state is there to serve the bureaucracy than the other way around. And say what these various countries that Terence is talking about, they had one thing in common, which was regardless of their sort of ideological outlook or leanings, they made pragmatic choices when it mattered. They didn't let leftist ideology get in the way of what they were looking at doing.
and that's the problem we're facing, aren't we? I mean, an ANC that has it's doubled down on the National Democratic Revolution.
Yeah. Look, the idea that you are going to have this developmental state that can pick winners and nimbly navigate the fourth industrial revolution is a nonsense when you consider how difficult it is to get a driver's license.
Absolutely.
Look, I mean, I can say that in a personal experience. I waited for 6 months for my card.
Oh my.
And as I made those pilgrimages to the Great Hall of the Science bureaucracy, I spoke to people, full complement of the Rainbow Nation, black, white, Indian, old, young. Many of them who had done this several times. It got to a point where you would actually ask for your receipt to be stamped so that you could show it to a wayward traffic cop. That's another thing. I mean, look at our road deaths.
Yeah.
Those are basic functions of a society. But it's almost like that's the boring stuff that we're not interested in dealing with. We're interested in the big philosophical questions.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, governance is not a sociology seminar.
Well, speaking about sociology seminars, this week actually I will be at the University of Stellenbosch, and I'll be delivering a seminar on there, and we'll be talking about some of these issues. For instance, how do you build a freedom-loving and a prosperous society? How do you create a society where everything leans on the side of liberty? These are tough issues, and on the one hand, as Terence says, it's not just ideology, and as Nick pointed out, actually, there's also a level of pragmatic. Or pragmatism that you actually have to consider in this instance. Guys, as I speak to what we're doing in the week, maybe let me go around the table. What can the viewer expect as we wrap up? What are you writing about this week?
Well, we have 5 columnists on board as a matter of course during the week. So every day there's a new columnist. Saturday we have 2 columnists, and it varies depending on who I choose and what we do.
Right.
And then on Sunday we have what's becoming an eclectic mix. We have our CEO, Frans Cronje, we have David Bullard for a bit of satire, Andrew Kenny for a bit of very clear, punchy explanation of things that we mere mortals don't really understand on the technical side. And then we may have something at the moment, I've put on what I call Editor's Choice.
Right.
An excerpt from Bill Johnson's latest book, which explains, or it gives an explanation for why the ANC is as unsuccessful as it is. And that makes very interesting reading, because although people may have different views, he pins down on something that I think will resonate with people.
Terence, what can we expect this week? What's on your mind?
Well, land, property rights. I am the property rights guy. A bit of mining, and my column this week looks at the role of small business in South Africa. Another one that we've been talking about. In fact, we don't even have to go back to 1994. We can go back to P.W. Botha's era.
Right.
How small business was going to be the great savior of South Africa. Yet we sit in a situation where we are just outperformed by pretty much every other country in this respect, even ones that are deeply hostile to the free market. So something has obviously gone very wrong there, and that's what I explore.
Nick, one of our new writers. Anything you have on your mind this week?
Well, I mean, for the Daily Friend, we're going to be having, as always, news items which put things in the larger context of the battle of ideas. Also, we've got Frans Cronje speaking to us through the Southern Cape this week.
That's right.
Which tomorrow on the 9th, he's going to be in Swellendam, then he's going to be moving to Barrydale, then onward to Van Wyksdorp, and then finishing up in Stilbaai.
Excellent.
So that he'll be going and talking about sort of what South Africans can expect in the next 10 years during that speaking tour. And attendance is free, so if you're in one of those towns, make sure to come along.
Excellent.
What the CEO is doing is basically promoting the tourism industry, because that is such a spectacular part of the world.
Yes.
Lucky him. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us for what has been the first installment of the Daily Friend. As we said, it is a daily short video for you to set out or be able to sort of anticipate what we'll be writing about in the week and in the day. Guys, as always, please support the Institute of Race Relations. Support our writers over here who put out quality content, hard analysis, and data, of course, from the Institute. And you can do that by becoming a friend of the IRR. You can SMS your name to 32823, and terms and conditions do apply, and an SMS costs R1, but someone will give you a call and sign you up for a monthly debit. Now look, the average contribution we get from our friends is about 90 Rand a month, but it's that 90 Rand that helps us provide the good content to get out there to you, as France is right now. For those of you who find SMSs to be a bit archaic and old school, you can also find us online at www.irr.org.za/join, and you can sign up there and someone will give you a call. As I said, guys, this is the Daily Friend, and you'll also find us online, especially with the content and all the articles that will be produced at www.dailyfriend.co.za. Guys, I'm Big Daddy Liberty. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.